Well, hello, everyone. James Beck, once again, your U.S. Army combat veteran host here as a bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to remind everybody out there in the world that on the narrow road, it's not our choices that equip us for his call. It's his call that equips us for our choices. So let's see how he's equipped us today by talking to my guest, Victorious Thompson. All right, we're back, everybody, and welcome again to the Patriots Advocating Truth and Honor podcast, a.k.a. The Path. And my guest again is Victorious Thompson. Vic, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, James.
Man, I'm excited to have you. Justin, he had introduced, Justin is a mutual acquaintance of ours, business coach, financial advisor, advocate in his coaching program. And he had linked us up together. And of course, you and I both trust him so much that when he made the connection, we didn't really need to know too much about each other. We just went, okay, well, if Justin says this guy is good, then I'm gonna lean into that. And then we got to talking a little bit and read up a little bit about you. And I think you're a pretty awesome dude. I'm pretty excited to get into your brain, kind of pull out the different things that God's knit into that brain and get into some cool conversations here on the show. So before we get into all that, as I do for the guests that I have on my show, I usually like to pull some information from you. And I put together a short little introductory bio for you here that I want to use to introduce you to the audience on the show. I'm going to read through that, and then as soon as we get to the bottom of that introduction, I'm going to hand it over to you with some questions to just kind of learn more about you and the work that you do to expand the kingdom here in our beautiful veteran community. So your name is Victorious Thompson, which I love that name. I'm going to ask you about that name in a bit because I want to know if that was your God-given name. Is that what your parents named you or what? I want to get into that. But Victorious Thompson, you go by Vic, and you are a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, former football player, highly respected real estate entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. You flipped over 150 properties, funded more than 300 deals through your private lending company, and you now work as a realtor and mentor, helping everyday people win in real estate with strategy, with clarity, and with purpose. But, aside from that impressive record, that resume is pretty good. But what sets you apart and what I noticed just from the things I've learned so far is your character. Your personal motto is win by serving others. And I think that reflects a mindset that reminds me of what Jesus taught in Mark 10 when two of Jesus' closest disciples, James and John, asked Jesus to grant them high-ranking positions to sit at Jesus' right and left hand. And Jesus, he realized that they're thinking in terms of earthly glory, right? They still hadn't elevated their mind to the eternal status of what was coming. And so he said they didn't know what they were asking for, and he redirected their ambition. He said that in the kingdom, true leadership comes by way of servanthood and sacrifice, not domination, right? And so he was contrasting the worldly power that structures rulers where we lord over others with kingdom leadership. Jesus says, whoever desires to become great shall be your servant. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life for a ransom or in ransom for many. And that's in verses 43 and 45 of Mark. And so I just thought that really struck me about who you are and what you're about. You, I think, understand that commission in the kingdom, that its greatness is defined by servanthood, not by spotlight. And that's why for you, every deal, every mentorship, every connection is a chance to build others up from what I can see. And we're going to get into that. Not just to build wealth, right? I mean, wealth is a side effect, and then it's a tool to be reinvested, but it's not the goal, right? It's just a side piece of the goal, if you will. So that's where I want to start today, brother, with a name like Victorious. Like I said, we're going to get into that. I think it would be easy to let ego carry the day, especially from a football player background and all that type of stuff. But instead, to me, it seems like you're building an empire that's based on humble service. And I think that's the real legacy of your name. Now, of course, we always have to acknowledge that this is how God knit us together. These are the gifts that he gave us, and that's where they originated from. But I want to get into the experiences in your life that really kind of oriented you in the direction to know that this is the will of God, the path for my life. How did that manifest? How did you become the guy that you become, and really personify the things that you personify in your everyday life? So hit me, man. Go straight into it. Let me know where all that where that's hitting you.
Yeah, I think there's kind of three main phases. So when I went to the Air Force Academy, I was a walk-on scrub to the football team. And while I was there, I mean, a hungry dog runs faster. I wasn't
Yeah.
recruited. I had to try out against prior enlisted, had to ask for cleats. And so I scratched and clawed my way there through the prep school, through my freshman year, sophomore year, got hurt. Junior year, I was the number three guy. And my senior year, I was the starting wide receiver. And we were playing Tennessee in Neyland Stadium in front of 109,000 people. Arian Foster, Gerard Mayo. Man, I was like, that battle through uh, was a lot of things. I was doing that by myself. I
Yeah.
wasn't Christed up, as I like to say it at the time.
Right.
And this is where some of the Victorious started. So I was always a big fan of nicknames or trying to do that. When I was caught my first touchdown, my home paper reached out and said, "Hey, are you in the paper catching touchdowns?" I was like, "Yeah, I thought you knew." And then
You
I
ever
had to
heard of
look.
me?
You haven't heard of me, right? And another one is the paper there in Colorado was, hey, I was like, oh yeah, by the name I have a nickname, and they go, what's that? I go, the Waffle House, because I'm open 24/7. And my coach came back. He's like, hey, Vic, are we gonna have a problem in the
Right.
newspaper? And I go, I don't know, coach. I've never been in the newspaper like that, you know?
Right.
And one of my good buddies who passed away, Carson, we would always battle him. He was a cornerback, I was a receiver, and he was younger than me, but on varsity. So I would always call him out to go against him in one-on-ones and him me, and that's how I really made the team. And he would always joke around. There was that notorious B.I.G. song that goes, no, notorious, and he would just call me
Right.
Victorious. So that's where some of the Victorious started. So I say that as the first phase of, that was my cowboy years. That was me really just trying to make it and trying to live the academy values, which is integrity first, service before self, excellence all we do. But that is muddied with problems because you're starting out at 17 and young 20s. So
Right.
fast forward, I, served my military commitment, deployed, really got to learn how to serve the country. But again, man, it's different when you're serving the country, right? It doesn't have a
Yeah.
face necessarily. You don't see it day to day. So inevitably, my time was up to serve in that regard. So I went out on my own, went to business school, and then got out in the public sector, and then eventually went out on my own. And this will say chapter two is, hey, I'm going to get into real estate, and I am going to, I'll just say, lack of a better word, serve myself
Yeah.
because serving the country, I knew, I could do that. I had the chops for all that, but I was like, hey, I went to business school. I've always wanted to start a business. Let me start my own. And when my buddy Carson died, that was a significant emotional event to say, man, he's not even alive. I've got to go for it. Everybody has a go for it moment. So I did that. I basically sold all my stuff in California, moved to Georgia, and started a real estate company with a buddy. Uh, and where I was tested here is I left my corporate job, which I worked my tail off to get,
Mm.
and 6 months later, COVID hit.
Mm.
And so think about new business owner, 6 months out, COVID hits, and I was like, okay, this is the business owner entrepreneur test, right? Here we go. This is what it looks like. And that was also a time where I didn't see it at the time. Again, still not fully Christed up. I would say Christian by culture, but not by calling.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I've read the books. It's not a straight line. And I just kind of white knuckled it. And, I let some of my health go. I just gave everything I had. I've like cut down some relationships. I gave everything I had in, I'll say, an egocentric way. I said, I've got to get profit because I've got bills to pay,
Yeah.
right? So I need to get profits over service. So I went all into the business trying to make that good. And then I'll fast forward that to that was business one. Um, COVID happened, and I had two equity partners, and that business, we say we sunsetted it. It just kind of took its course. So when COVID happened, after that, we still did the business, and I can get into the particulars. I just want to focus on the Christ-centered pieces. Man, I always want to RV across the country. So I got my RV. I was raising capital for deals, and I did that, and I drove across the country for a year doing that. And that was, looking back, my Jesus in the wilderness time. And I had this mentor, a capital raising mentor. He goes, um, you tell me what it means to be victorious, and that's the brand for your business. And I go, well, victorious is definitely not about just making money. And he's like, I want you to set a timer for 20 minutes and just write down everything. I was like, I don't need a timer. I'll just walk around and just figure it out. Man, I spent 2 days doing nothing. Then I came back and I wrote down, the third thing I wrote down was win by serving others.
Mm.
And that really, combined with my time in the wilderness, had like did something to me. I didn't know what it was at the time, but God was kind of pulling on me a little bit. And now I had the alignment, but I wasn't Christed up yet. So I moved here to Austin, and again, my business is not working because at the end of 22, real estate was just up in the air.
Yeah.
And I had some personal challenges with my father being terminally ill, and he actually passed a year and a half ago. So I was going through all that, and I was a new kid in Austin, 6 months in.
Right.
So I am talking to this guy. He goes, let me pray on that. I was like, hey man, I'm looking for a church. And he goes, come on down to Red Rocks, Austin. I go in there. He's like, you got to meet Tim. Tim runs a small group. And getting in that small group, I remember my first time coming in there. This was a linchpin, the major domino. And I was like, hey man, I don't want to tell him what's going on with me. They're like, you got to tell him. You got to tell him.
Yeah.
And man, I was from a no cry, rub some dirt on it. I'm not old, but I'm not that young. I was in that generation.
Yeah.
And they got to tell them what's going on with your dad. And I just let them know everything. They put their arms around me and prayed with me and just brought me in. So every Thursday, like for 2 years, I was just going to that group, started going to church. Um, and they kind of walked beside me. And the
Mm.
scripture, for the first time, I hadn't read the Bible, and I read a lot of books, and I was like, how did I not read that one? But when you read the Bible, sometimes when you're young and you read the Bible, sometimes it's just not, it doesn't stick, right?
Well,
It's just not
you don't
right.
have eyes to hear, or eyes to see and ears to hear yet.
Right. Yeah.
I've said many times, it's a lot like a 4-year-old with a trash can lid and a wooden spoon. It just,
Mhm.
just sounds like noise to you.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm with you 100%. I'm one of those people that
Mhm.
used to think I totally understood everything that
Yeah.
was in the Bible without ever having to read a
Yeah.
word of it. And once you
Yeah.
start reading it, it's like, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
Why have I
Yeah.
not been in that book every day for my entire life up to this
Every
point?
day. Yes. And I think the thing, where now looking back, before I was reading the Bible, I was now seeking God.
Yeah,
And a good buddy of mine, once you get around the right people, right? You are what you eat, you are who you hang around with.
yeah,
And they're like, you start, and I can't quote the verse, I'm working on that scripture, but if you seek
right,
the Lord, he'll seek you back, right?
right.
But he's not gonna, he'll be there for you, but he may not go looking for you, right? But he'll be there for you, and he's waiting for you. And that just started a chain of events. I've met my girl, who's now my wife. I got recently married 2 months ago. We got baptized last November, and our faith has just been on fire. And
Good
that's
deal.
something I talked to Justin about quite a bit. Is like, when we got married, that wasn't a decision, that was a commitment to one another and a covenant with God. So my
Yes.
whole life has went from, this outsider lost sheep, I think, is the best way I can think about it. But I knew something was there. We're all looking for something, but to finally find it, man, now I'm getting my goals are to have the fruit of the Spirit in my life and to share
Yeah.
those with others. And yes, wealth and money, I got to pay bills and all that stuff. But really, what
Sure.
I'm seeking is the fruit of the Spirit.
Let me ask you, man, because you mentioned something earlier, and it just kind of clicked in my head for the veteran community, because I've thought about this
Mm,
before, but not as consciously as I just did.
yeah.
You said that you had served the country, right? And the country was
Mm,
kind of this anonymous, faceless thing. It
Mm,
wasn't super tangible to you in that
mhm,
concept of it. But when you got out of military service and you got
mhm,
into the business thing and you were really trying to serve yourself, as you said, did you
mhm.
have this kind of sense that, hey, I've done my sacrifice with my military service. I checked that block. Now it's my turn. It's time for me to go out and get mine. Did you kind of have that feeling?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
because I looked on my uniform, it said my last name or Captain Thompson, and
Right.
it said U.S. Air Force, and I said, well, if it's more about me than the Air Force, I need to get out because being in a leadership role as an officer, look, you're not out there for, you got to serve the guys. You work
Right.
for the guys
Yep.
under you. So that it was, again, I said it was selfish. I just I chose myself over serving
Yeah.
longer. I know I did my time, right? And I'm
Right.
happy
Right.
about that. But long term, I was like, James, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, man, moving around all the time, blah blah blah, wearing the monkey suit, etc.
I
So
I
yes.
hear you, man. I mean, the crazy thing that comes up for me that I think about with that is, I don't think there's anything wrong with, we put in the time, we've done these things. Now we want to pull a
Sure.
little bit back out for ourselves. The crazy
Yeah.
thing is that if we shift from serving, the country
Mhm.
to serving God, that's going to do more for us than
Yes.
any of the other stuff you were talking about, any other stuff I've done in
Totally.
business school. You know what I mean? So if we're really
Hmm.
looking for ours, the
Hmm.
best place to find it is up. It's not
Amen.
here with us manufacturing stuff.
Amen. And I
Um,
think going from serving in the military to serving myself was how I discovered that I need to be
right.
looking up instead of in the mirror.
Yeah, I love that, and I was just going to ask you that question. I was going to say, what was it that really, if you could point to one thing that
Hmm.
was, if you had to, gun to your head, had to pick out one thing that was really the kind of
Uh-huh.
trigger point for you to turn your gaze upward instead of outward in front of you, what would you say that was?
The one, if I had to pick
Yeah, if you,
the one B is the small group that I started.
mm,
That was, but the thing that may sound a little bit weird was my father's death. And I'll explain that briefly. He had had a heart attack in 2013, but you just never recover from that. So it
right,
was 2023. So I mean, he was on the 19th green for the golfers. And I was hot and heavy with my relationship here, thinking about getting to the next step. I was like, hey, I got to go home. I packed up all my stuff and drove back to California because I just know that I felt called to take care of my dad. I just kept
yeah,
saying, like, hey, Lord, if I show up, can you just guide me? I don't know what's going on. So I get home, he can't walk. He's bed. We end up taking him to hospice, and over a month, I saw him slowly decay and die.
yeah,
And the point I'm trying to get at is, we've all celebrated new births. You've probably been around it with kids, and there is a miracle that happens
right,
there. But what I also realized is there is a miracle during death as well for
yeah,
perspective. And I remember working up to my dad's eulogy or celebration of life. I was practicing the eulogy, and I told myself, just in my military days, I never cry at the speeches because you have to get the message out.
right,
And I remember my girlfriend, now wife, then girlfriend, I had a sty on my eye. And she's like, you gotta cry at some point. And I was like, I hope so, but I don't know when it happens. So I go there, I do my dad's celebration of life speech, and I go sit down, and he was a veteran as well. And they did the gun
mm,
salute. And when those cracks went off, right when I finished, I sat
every
down.
every
I
time,
melted. I melted in my
yeah,
mom's arms, and I don't even know the last time I cried. But the reason why I say that is I'm thick-skinned, but hard-hearted from my past. That's another subject. But I had had a hardened heart, and I felt the walls just come down.
yep,
And I felt like Jesus's love that I never knew entered me, and now I could share it with other people.
yeah.
But that was the one event was happened with my father's passing, but my heart softened.
I think that's such a pertinent story, man. One thing that we can be certain of, we can't be certain of everything. I say that God's got two wills, right? He's got his prescriptive will, which he lays out
Hmm.
beautifully for us right out there in black and white.
Hmm.
But then we've got his secret or his hidden will that's quite frankly none of our business. But I'll tell you
Hmm.
one thing that in his prescriptive will he makes clear is that
Hmm.
he doesn't waste suffering.
Yes.
Everything that happens in the world could only
Yes.
happen if God allowed it to happen. If he didn't want it to happen,
Hmm.
it's not going to happen. That's just the way it
Hmm.
goes. And so when it does happen, there's a
Yeah.
reason And even though we can't always see that reason,
Hmm.
we can trust that he is working that for good. And, when you think about your father passing, obviously that's not something that you're happy about. You wish he was still here. You wish you could talk to him. Death is a punishment for the living, not for the dead, if they're
Hmm.
saved anyway. He's up in a better place,
Hmm.
and we're still back here in the world, right? But
Hmm.
his sacrifice of life was a tool that God used to bring you
Yes.
into the kingdom.
Hmm.
And, in that way, you look at it and you go, what a tremendous gift that
Hmm.
that God gave you, but also that your dad gave you in that
Yes.
sense, you know?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you took that perspective. And I think that's pretty awesome, because a lot of people that, they lose someone that they love. And I mean, even
Yeah.
when it's harder if you lose somebody, unexpectedly or too early or
Sure.
whatever the case is. It's a little
Hmm.
bit easier when they're at the latter end of their life.
Hmm.
But my parents are in their 70s. If they went now, it'd be too
Hmm.
soon.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's easy for us to take that and be bitter and
Sure.
separate ourselves from God. And,
Yeah.
and you went in the other direction. And I think
Yeah.
that's a tremendous perspective to have. And it's also
Yeah.
something that that motivation doesn't wean. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, you're never going to um, release the pain of losing your father in a way
Hmm.
where you become complacent with God. Does that make logical sense what I'm saying? Because
It
that's such
does.
a powerful trigger in your memory that it's always
Hmm.
going to bring you back to how that connected you to God.
Yeah.
Positivity doesn't leave scars, right? But you losing your
Yeah.
dad is a scar that every time you
Hmm.
look at it, it reminds you that
Hmm.
it brought you to God. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually really happy for you that that is what is associated with your father's death more than the
Hmm.
bitterness of losing him. And I'm just, praise be to God for that. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, praise the Lord. I mean, what a legacy he left.
Yeah.
Like him on the way out was kind of high-fiving to me to like, hey, take that spark with you.
Yeah.
And I know when we come back together, that'll be something whatever that looks like, that'll be
Yeah.
enjoyed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think about that all the time, what it's going to look like. We have some information, but
Hmm.
not the whole information. And it's going to be amazing one way or another. We know that.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, let me shift over a little bit here and ask you about business. So, I mean,
Sure.
obviously, like you said, you do have bills to pay. You can't
Yep.
just lay down, take a nap, and expect to wake up in a mansion tomorrow, right? And I mean, in the literal sense, I guess in some ways you could. If God wanted it, like I said, He
Yeah.
could make that happen. I just
Right.
don't think that we're called to sleep and do nothing. We have to do our
Nah,
part as well.
we're here to
I once
work.
heard it said that we have to do the natural steps so the supernatural can present itself in our lives.
I love
And
that.
so, talk to me a little bit about that. How did you
Yeah.
go from being in the Air Force, and
Yeah.
did you just play ball in the Air Force? Was that or did you have a different job in the Air Force? I'm not sure exactly how that works. So, talk to me about that first,
Yeah.
and then tell me how you transitioned from what you were doing there into what you're doing now in the civilian world.
Gotcha. Yeah. So going to the Air Force Academy, when I was a kid, my dad was military. He took me to Thunderbirds, and I saw that. I was like, I want to do that. So I went to the school where you had the best chance of being a pilot, and I want to fly the F-22. However, also I want to get a, great education and play D1 football.
Right.
Now I had to go to the prep school. They told me no, so I was denied all of that, but I ended up making the team and starting, becoming a distinguished graduate in my major there in business. And then I had the option to fly, but the difference on that was if you wanted to fly, it was 12 years. 2 years to
Mm,
get your wings and 10-year commit. And
yeah.
that's a big ask for a young 20-year-old. So I passed on that opportunity. And then upon being commissioned, I did aircraft maintenance first.
Okay.
They sent me to Abilene, Texas. I went, who'd I piss off? I did great at school.
And
But
where are you from originally?
I grew up in California, so
Okay.
there's a base in Lompoc, California called
Yeah.
Vandenberg. And
Yeah, I know that.
that's where my dad retired. I grew up there since elementary school. We call that home. Mom's still
Okay.
there, house still there. So I come down to Abilene and, I had 100. I mean, I'm in aircraft maintenance, so I'm in charge of 100 guys. I mean, cigarette smoking, Mountain Dew drinking sons of bitches. You know what I mean?
Right.
Had a great assignment, got a great senior NCO, taught me everything I knew. Did that in Iraq for a year. Then once I came back, I by design, you move from the field into the program office. So I went into
Okay.
satellite program management. So Lockheed Martin was the contractor, we're the customer, got to test a bunch of satellites and test two satellites and launch one out there in Vandenberg. So the full circle moment was really cool. I was stationed in LA. And what happened next is I went to business school now. When I was at the academy, I got a chance to go to HBS, check out their summer program. I didn't even know how to spell. I didn't even know what an MBA was. I come from humble beginnings. But I went there and I was like, oh, wow, this is like, it's a big world out there. So I knew that's something I always wanted to pursue. That was my major too, business management. So I dropped my paperwork and I ended up going to USC for 2 years full time. And coming out of that, I did consulting for a little bit, but I'll tell you what, being an officer and being downrange in maintenance, that whole just doing Excel, making recommendations, not a good fit for me. Not a good
Yeah.
fit. So I got in one of their general management or development programs, which is a pretty typical track for military. Once you kind of do 4 to 6 years, get the MBA, they want you to come into a program. They kind of teach you, about operations, you don't know sales, marketing, some other things, and then you go run a business unit. So I got to do that for this company called Fortive, and I was their process improvement guy, which was great. I mean, it was a good first gig out of business school. We had business in US, Mexico, UK, New Zealand, Australia. So it was great, great travel. And I got to interact with so many different people that were civilian. And then I got into a sales role with them. We were selling fleet management software, which 36-month contracts over the phone. If you ever run into one of those people, make sure you interview them because that ain't easy. And I just, in both jobs, the end of my military and in corporate, I just felt like a cog in the machine. What
Yeah.
I have learned to anyone young listening to the podcast, go to a startup or a small company because you're so much more valuable because stuff's got to get done.
Right.
If there's a bunch of people, so I was trying to I was like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And so when I was in this job, I talked to my buddy. This was when Bigger Pockets was getting some attention. And for those people that don't know, that's like the original real estate podcast,
Okay.
plus or minus. It was a popular one in 2016, 17. So I started listening to that. I called my buddy in Georgia. I go, hey man, do you own any real estate? I'm now out of business school, out of Santa Monica, living in Orange County. And I go, hey man, I don't own any real estate. Do you? He goes, no. He's like, I think if we started real estate, we could get rich, right? And we go, yeah, all right, cool. And that's kind of, catching up to what I said earlier in the story. That's kind of the launch pad of, okay, let's get into real estate. And, we joined a mastermind, started trying to wholesale and flip property. And that was my entry point into real estate and business ownership.
Okay. And so, how did it go from, just basically we can get into this and it's a good lucrative, line
Mm,
of business to
mm,
getting to a place where you really wanted to help people with
yeah,
this aspect where,
sure.
talk to me a little bit about what you do there. How do you help
Yeah,
people? How did
yeah,
that come about that you wanted to help people?
yeah.
What is it that the spirit led you, that
Mm.
you felt led by the spirit to do within that? Like get into that for me a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think the one kind of initial where you have a moment where you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this. So it's the power of social media. It's kind of one of those things that's just new, and it was very much new at the time. But one of my family members reached out and said, hey, your cousin is going through a divorce and about to have her home foreclosed on.
Mm,
Now, we came in as investors, not realtors. So for those folks that don't know, that's just off market, meaning we are trying to find sellers that are motivated, which means they're in a distressed situation. Hey, I've got a divorce. I've got, we have to get foreclosed on. You can't necessarily hook up with a realtor and sell that on the market. So
right.
that's where we come in. And I call my cousin up. I go, hey, tell me what's going on. And she tells me, and I go, hey, I'm going to hand this to my business partner because it's too close. And I don't want to,
Right.
we're still running a business, but I tell my partner, I was like, hey, take care of this one. So we ended up helping them resolve their housing situation, getting the property bought and sold, and they got to move on to the next chapter of their life. And I went, hey, wait a minute. I wasn't just selling something to someone. I actually helped a family member out. And that was kind of step one because I was like, already doing this, but I go, we're helping families out that really need something,
Yeah.
right? It's like when your situation is dire, I mean, you're either going to get rolled up or someone's going to come in, and we got to kind of be knights in shining armor.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong, we have to make a profit on that, right? It's still a business, but I felt
Sure.
like the purpose and profit were like really, really well
Right.
together.
You get to put that check in the bank with your head up, and sleep like a
Totally.
baby at night afterwards.
Yeah, they got a check too. They got a
Right.
check. We got a check. All the people in the value chain got a check, and
Like,
they were all
like
people
Oprah,
I
you
knew.
get a check.
Yeah,
You get a check. Everybody gets
yeah.
a check.
Instead of like just Bank of America took the whole
Yeah.
check or something. That was kind of where I realized like, okay, this is what service looks like for me
Mhm.
going forward. Then fast forward a little bit through, we started that business in Georgia and South Carolina. Then I mentioned at COVID, I had the RV trip, and then I landed in Austin. And this is where Christ really came into my life.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, when I got here, I had a tough first 6 months. I've got deals that I've invested in personally where, the interest rates change, the math on all the deals change, right? I'm still trying to get out of deals with my partners. I got my dad's stuff going on. I'm here. I don't know a ton of people. I don't know anyone really, but one friend from business school here. I'm not in church. You know, again, there's a time to be solo. I think it's a season, but long term for guys, really anyone, we're supposed to be in community, right? As soon as you go to church, you learn
Well,
that, right?
the very first, when you go back to the creation story, every single day ends with a benediction, and God said
Hmm.
it was good, and God said it was good. The
Yeah.
very first malediction, the very first negative thing that God says about creation comes when he
Hmm.
looks at Adam and says it is not good for man to be alone. It's the first time he
Right.
says it's not good.
Right.
And so we don't really think about that, but we're not
Hmm.
designed to be
Hmm.
alone. It's not good when we're alone. And
Hmm.
so I agree. That's what came up when you just said that.
No, I think a good reflection, and I'll close this out, is I moved to Austin for two reasons. I want to find community because when
Hmm.
you're in the military, you're the professional new guy and you're
Yep.
chasing your business and trying to do that. And I wanted to find my wife. And in February of last year, actually of was that yeah last February, I had a surprise birthday party. I didn't know. Me and my now wife went to dinner, and she's like, "Oh, I want to take you to do something we haven't done together." She took me to Cidercade, and I was like, "Oh, so we're gonna play video games? Like, awesome!" you know. And I go inside, and all my buddies from church are there. And I drop my bag because I'm usually the guy doing the surprising, not getting surprised.
Yeah.
So that was and I felt it. I felt that same thing with my dad. I felt something in my chest. I went, oh, community, check. And then my wife was sitting there smiling with my mother-in-law, actually lives here in town as well. And I went, wife, check.
Yep.
And that is almost non-real estate focused because it's not, it was, is this move to Austin really going to work? And then on the real estate side, I'm moving from such a position of purpose where it's like, how can I serve this individual? And I've been using real estate to grow my roots and branches here in Austin. So
Yeah.
what's great about that is whether you're a buyer, seller, investor, title company, lender, I get a reason to talk to so many different people, and it's really provided that platform for me, not only to serve more people, but to grow the community here in Austin.
Yeah, and you get to, we're the image bearers of God, right? And so
Yep.
we're called to reflect his image
Hmm.
out into, creation basically,
Hmm.
and to reflect his instructions and his
Yeah.
commands back from creation back up to him in our
Hmm.
obedience, right? And
Yeah.
so you are, from what I'm hearing and what I've seen, building a network
Hmm.
where that's what you're doing, right? You're
Yep.
being the image bearer, reflecting it out and reflecting
Hmm.
what's coming back up to him in obedience.
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody's perfect. Sanctification's it's a
Totally.
rough path, right? There's a reason why the
Totally.
path is narrow and few are on it.
Hmm.
But it sounds like you're really making an awesome effort into that, and I think that's
Yeah.
a tremendous endeavor. I
Yeah.
think it's it's very myopic, very narrow-minded, and tunnel vision for us to think that the only way that we can serve God professionally is in, as priests or ministers or in the
Yeah,
clergy of a church or something like that, or we
yeah,
have to be actually out there selling Christianity, which I'm not a fan of.
yeah,
But our employment can be for God and should be for God, and we're
mhm.
called to go out and make disciples, right? And we do
Yes,
that through our witness and our testimony, not through pressure and judgment like a lot of people do. And I think that's what you're doing.
yeah,
I think that's pretty awesome, man. Let me ask you here,
mhm,
as we kind of come to the tail end of our time.
mhm.
There's a lot of people that are watching this show. I hope anyway, but that are aspiring entrepreneurs, right? That are
Yeah,
people that are have some military experience, understand
yeah,
that they want to stop trading their time for other people's money, start
hmm,
controlling their time, controlling their money, and then as Christians, rededicating that back up to the Lord. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody that's in that in between stage, that aspirational stage, what would your golden advice be to people?
you got to start hanging out with who you want to be,
Mm,
right? If you're hanging out with a bunch of bums, define that as the way you want, right?
right,
But let's say you want to be a $10 million, realtor. Well, do you hang out with any $10 million realtors? Nope. Hey,
right,
you want to be a business owner, but you're hanging around all people in the military? So I said it earlier, you are what you eat and you are the sum of the five people you hang around with.
yeah,
So I think that's number one. I'm going to give you a bonus one
okay,
because I don't want to leave people hanging. Now, this will come up with Justin too. I don't know one person that's won a gold medal without a coach.
right,
So when you go to be an entrepreneur or business owner, that is going to be your biggest lesson in self-growth. And if you think that you can do that alone, don't don't you better get your support network
yep,
trued up. And at some point, it may or may not be in the budget, but you need to be working towards having a coach because when I think the difference between myself and others is I'm giving you a gold medal service because I've been taught by the best. I'm
right.
supported by the best, and that's how I can get that to you. And one of those coaches is God.
And I mean, God is he's our greatest coach, right? I mean,
Hmm.
and I think the thing about God that takes me back to what you said earlier was that he's not tangible for us, right? And so a lot
Hmm.
of times people don't put the stock into God that
Hmm.
they should. Fear of the Lord isn't about being terrified of him. It's about
Hmm.
prioritizing him in every aspect of your life. God's not looking for 99.99%. He wants 100. And if you can
Hmm.
push that up to 110, not only should you do that, but you
Hmm.
need to do that. We're called even to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but we're also called to help each other. Like I
Hmm.
said, it's not good for man to be alone. God
No.
uses us to help each other. He doesn't need
Hmm.
to. He could snap his fingers right now and make us all whatever he wanted us to be. He
Yeah.
could make us all learn whatever he wanted us to learn, but that's not the
Hmm.
point of us
Hmm.
being here. It's not just him doing all that directly to us. It's about him infusing that through us, into each other, and back through and up to him. And
Hmm.
so, I've got a coach. Justin is my coach. You've had coaches. We've worked with other people. Every athlete, celebrity, celebrity actors have a director. Sports stars have a coach, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody, nobody does anything by
Hmm.
themselves in this world that's great, right? And
Hmm.
nobody can do anything apart from the grace and will of God. So those need to
Amen.
be central focuses if we want to succeed. I would agree 100%. Well, Vic, last thing I want to ask you here, man, and I'll give you back the floor for the end piece here. But
Hmm.
is there anything that anybody that should be looking to reach out to you? Anybody that you want to make connections, or is there a way for people to get a hold of you that you prefer? Like specific people, if you're this guy looking for this, get a hold of me on this website or whatever the case. Like, let me know. Let people out there know who needs to be looking to get a hold of you and how they can do so.
Yeah, well, I spend about 80% of my time on brokerage. So if you're a buyer, seller, investor, or an agent looking to become number one in your business, I'm your guy.
Okay.
Second, I spend about 15% of my time running my private money, hard money business. So I'm always looking for good operators out there that need a capital partner.
Okay.
And last is, man, if you're feeling like there's a connection or a calling, I said I reserve 5% is what I call my sexy projects. So I can share more about that on the next one, but
Okay.
that's some of my bigger deals. That's some of the stuff I'm doing in the community, some of my mentorship programs. Again, I'm always mentoring a cadet at the academy. I got a guy who's a sophomore right there right now. And fast forward that I had a guy, my last guy that was a sophomore, he actually asked me to officiate his wedding. He's now a
Wow.
30-year-old. So if any of that is interest of you, you can get me at a couple spots. On Instagram is the Victorious Thompson, and it has a link in bio with all my other handles. And my website is victoriousthompson.com.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll put all of the links, any links that you want to include here are going to be in the show notes. So nobody has to remember any of that. They'll just be able to click on it and
Cool.
find you that way if they're looking to get in touch. Well, Vic, it's been great having you on the show, brother. I knew Justin was going to make us a good introduction
Uh-huh.
here, a good recommendation. I knew we were going to have some really cool stuff to talk about. I love your
Yeah.
story, man. I'm very grateful for, on behalf of me and my audience here, for you coming on and sharing it with us.
Of
And
course.
anything else you want to say to read us out here?
Oh man. Well, one, thank you for the opportunity. I don't know any better way to close, but I think about my identity. I've been a football player, I've been in the military, I've been a corporate guy, an entrepreneur, and I think the most important thing I've done is I put my identity in Christ, and I'm
Yeah.
more than enough in anything I do, and nothing else defines me besides that. And that identity seek, I think, for the veterans out there in the community and other people at large, is like you're not your work, you're not your job.
Yeah, no, 100%. We are the image bearers of Christ. Like I said, the
Hmm.
image bearers of God. And if we root our identity in that, then nothing else that happens is going to affect us. It's about our identity in Him, not our circumstances, that drive the joy and the reverence that we have in our life. And as Paul put it in
Yeah,
Scripture, the peace that passes understanding. Right.
that's so well
So,
said.
with that, Vic, I'm going to close us out here on the
Yeah,
show. I want to thank you again for coming and spending some time with us. For Victorious Thompson, I've been James Beck. And as always, I'm praying for all of you out there, wherever you are, that the Lord be a lamp unto our feet and a light to bless and keep each of us together on the path. Until next time, hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'll see you on the next round, and take care of yourselves out there.